Morning everyone, welcome back to the shed. It's been a little while since we've been in here. Unfortunately work has kind of taken over everything over the last few months, so I've not really been able to put together videos like this or even deal with my blog, which has been a bit unfortunate. But this morning I thought I'd try and create something new to at least show that I'm still around, still alive, and that I can kind of wrap up a couple of things that maybe I should have wrapped up a few months ago. One of which was a series of videos you may remember on Kitthawk's SU17 fitter. That was one of the things that I kind of did a few videos on and completed the model. Didn't really do anything else about it, although I'm sure many of you will have seen this thing by now. Before I do that, I'd just like to go through something that sort of piqued my interest a little bit this morning. I was watching a video online on YouTube that was produced and presented by a young drummer from Canada, and he was talking in that video about the use of cheap drums for gigs. And what it was the idea that you don't necessarily have to buy hugely expensive items, take them out. You can use cheap drums and they can sound good in the right hands. I think the kit that he bought was like $200 or something like that. He hadn't bought it with any hardware, it was just a set of shells. And he'd taken it home, tuned it up, and then he'd taken it to a gig in Ontario, I think. An outside gig where his drums would be shared by a bunch of other drummers. Now he said that he didn't really particularly like the idea of sharing drums. I can understand that, don't like people playing my drums either. However, he took them out, and within 20 seconds of sound checking, the sound guy at this gig was amazed by how good these drums sounded through the PA. Didn't have to deal with them, didn't have to EQ them or anything like that, they sounded perfect. Through the night, he then started to get compliments on how his very cheap drum kit sounded to other people. So he created this little video, and in this video he said that he felt that it wasn't necessarily the equipment that you used, it was the hands of the player getting the best from that equipment. So I started to think while I was watching this video, well, that kind of translates to model makers as well. It manifestly is part of what we do in exactly the same way as it's part of what he did in the video. And I started to think about the number of videos that I see online, the number of questions I see on forums, the number of updates I see on Facebook, or even tweets from modelers, beginners, asking questions about the hobby and assuming in some cases that the more they throw at it, the better the equipment they buy, the more expensive the models that they buy, that somehow that will make them better modelers straight from the bat, which is completely untrue. And the sort of supposition from a lot of these people is that if they buy and use what they see the high-end guys, whoever those guys may be, if they use the same material, then instantly they're going to be able to get the same results. Completely ignoring the fact that those guys who were presenting that material and putting those models out there have probably had 10, 15, 20, 25 years of experience of using all of the other basic materials before they've got to that point. So I kind of watched this video, and it really made me think, and it really made me sort of start to question the approach that a lot of people have to our hobby, and how in certain cases I've seen modelers who've asked questions about quite high-end materials and quite high-end techniques, and they've been using those on models where I can see instantly seam lines or glue marks or misalignment, or I can see brush strokes in the paint, those kind of things. And it seems to me that the basics are not being put into place before they move on to those next steps. Intriguingly, over the last few months, I've started posting on my Facebook page, my personal Facebook page, and also a couple of modelling pages, how I've started to revert back to using techniques that I used 25 years ago. And amongst those techniques are the use of enamels, washes, dry brushing, all of those kind of things. So that the results that I'm getting today are similar in appearance to the results I got 25 years ago. But more than that, I was finding that by decluttering my technique bank and removing more complex, for want of a better word, ideas and techniques, my modelling and the results that I was getting became sharper and more focused. I was no longer thinking about how I was going to implement a technique that I just learned. Instead, I was focusing on the model and techniques that would be appropriate to the building and painting of that model. As a result of that, I found that a few people have started to contact me, and I've also started to see updates on this now where other modelers have started to kind of see the funny side of this and said, okay, well, he's using that, I think we'll use the same sort of thing. And they've gone kind of back to basics, using enamels or washes or whatever, and using what they have already in their paint stocks rather than buying new materials. Now, don't get me wrong, and I've said this before, I've said this on many occasions in here, I'm not opposed to the idea of off-the-shelf finishing products. I'm not opposed to the idea of weathering products. All of those kind of things, I think they're great, I think they're cool, and if you want to use them, great. However, I do feel strongly that when it comes to beginners, if I was giving my my kind of impression of the way that the hobby should progress, and if I was trying to guide beginners through that path to more sophisticated ideas, I would be saying to them, learn the basics, learn how to put the model together, learn how to remove the parts from the runners, learn how to glue them together, learn the basics of hand painting, and then move on. I wouldn't be saying to them, yeah, well, if you buy a £130 Tamiya Corsair kit and you go out and you buy an Iwata custom micron, you'll be able to get results exactly the same as those guys winning gold medals at Euro Militaire or wherever. I wouldn't tell them that. It would be stupid to do that. And frankly, I think it's stupid for other people to constantly push that idea that the more you spend, the more you have, the more ideas and the more materials you have around you in the workshop, the better your models are going to be. It's not. It's going to clutter your workshop, it's going to clutter your brain, and frankly it's going to clutter the model with technique that shouldn't be on there in the first place, and it's going to make those models look simply like other people's. It's not going to allow you to define your own style, it's not going to allow you to develop your own techniques, and it's not going to allow you to understand how all of those building blocks are put into place onto a model to get it to the point that you want it to. You know, it would be exactly the same as if, you know, 17-year-old was taught to drive in his mum's beat up old Fiesta, and then once he passed his test they then said, well, you're fine now, you've passed your test, you can go out and drive a Formula 1 car. It doesn't work like that. You've still got to have all of those building blocks in place, and that's exactly the same as it is with building models. So it was an interesting video. I thought it was interesting to see how he pushed the idea that it wasn't the equipment that you had in front of you, it was your hands. Going back to the idea of buying hundreds of pounds worth of new tools and glues and paints and kits and all of that sort of stuff, that's great, and you're going to have a fantastic looking workbench, and you're going to have paint racks all around you that have got 56 billion different colours on, but if you can't use one of them properly, the rest of it isn't going to fall into place. And frankly, the best modelers out there could take a £4 plastic kit, 2 paint brushes, half a dozen tins of paint, and make that look great right from the box without blinking, because they've learned how to get to that point. Equally, a beginner could be given everything they've ever wanted, and they could make a right hash of it from day one if those things aren't in place. So I just thought I'd sort of run that by you this morning and see what you kind of thought. It just seemed like a good jump off point for a conversation, I think, and I think I'm going to discuss this online as well. I'm going to put this into words and see if I can't create a blog entry around it. So I'm sure many of you will disagree with my stance. That's fine. Equally, I think that what I say may well resonate with a lot of people, and they may well say, yeah, I think that's probably right. Okay, moving on. I created 2 videos, more than 2 videos, 3, 4 videos, I can't remember now, it's been so long ago, on this thing. This is Kitthawk's 48th scale fitter. You may well remember me discussing this sort of ad nauseum at the beginning of the year, and how I was approaching the building of this model. Well, here it is, complete and ready to kind of rock and roll. It's all been photographed now, so it will feature in Model Airplane International next month, I think. I've got a whole bunch of stuff on this. It's a fully in-depth feature on the building of this model. Now, you may remember that for those who've been kind of keeping up with this thing and keeping up with the release of the kit and some of the things that were said about it, various places discussed this in some depth, you probably drew the conclusion that it was, you know, a pretty maligned kit in places, which to some degree I agree with. And there are issues with this thing, but those issues are not insurmountable, and they're not the kind of thing that a modeler with some experience wouldn't be able to get over. I guess this links into my opening little ramble, actually, because this is a good example of that. This is a good example of a kit that is aimed at advanced modelers. It's not aimed at, you know, the guys who want to do this on their kitchen table, who've never built anything. They will buy this kit, build it, it will be an absolute failure, and they'll probably stop building models and play dominoes instead. So this thing is for advanced modelers. There's no two ways about that. The way it's constructed, the way it's broken down, the way you have to assemble it, the way you have to bring a whole bunch of individual little pieces that kind of sprout from kind of all corners of this thing, really puts it into that kind of bracket. Now, there are a number of things that I think it's worth pointing out that I didn't particularly like, and I do agree with what others have said about this. The intake shock cone is definitely a problem in this kit. The way that Kitthawk have recreated that important part of the aircraft is pretty kind of slapdash. They haven't really created a part that looks like the original thing. It's almost free floating. There's none of the upper and lower sections that go above the cone. None of that's in place. So when you look down the intake, basically you can see all the way to the cockpit, so it's pretty open. The way that I got around that was that I created as I said I would do in the original video, I created a blanking plate for the nose, this red part here, and I just covered it over, and I'm kind of happy with that. I think it looks good anyway. I probably would have done that even if the shock cone had been complete. I probably would have covered it over, because I think it adds a nice splash colour in that part. The second area that I think adds to the frustration of this are the recreation of the wing fences above the wing, and the way that those wing fences then blend into the pylons that sit beneath them. The fit of those pieces and the pylons underneath is in need of slight adjustment here and there. The way that Kitthawk have moulded them is that they've sort of, there's a curved edge underneath those pylons, but instead of having it curved and then having it perfectly curved down so it creates like a sweeping shape that fits underneath the wing, they've kind of got a stepped section which needs to be cleaned up. It's not a great deal, but it still needs to be done, and that allows that to fit. And then once you've fitted those pylons into place, then you add the wing fences, and then the front edge of those fences where they blend down onto the pylons, that needs to be filled. Problem with that is that those wing fences, I'm struggling to criticise them for it really, because it adds to the look of the model, are almost scale thickness. They're so fine and so delicate, they're really easy to break off, and because they have tabs that fit into sockets on the upper wing, there isn't a great deal to hold them into place, and I broke 2 of them while I was painting it, and had to kind of clean them up. So they're frustrating to have those kind of things in place. The attachment points for the tailplanes into the back of the fuselage that allows them to move up and down, they're very tiny, those pins, and I ended up having to drill through them and then drill into the fuselage so that I could pin them so that they've got some kind of decent contact point in there. The second, the next major item that was discussed about this kit is the fact that it's broken down. The fuselage is broken down into 3 sections: nose section, mid-centre section that holds the wings, and then the tail that holds the jet pipe, and those things go together. Now I'm assuming that Kitthawk have done that and allowed that to be the case so that they can create different versions of this, including, I'm assuming, a 2-seater. So they've allowed that nose section, the mid section and the tail section to join together and create a commonality of purpose for this kit. What that means is that you need to carefully think about how you're going to construct it and not follow the instructions at all. The instructions would suggest that you build the nose section with the cockpit in place, centre section, and then the tail section with the engine into place, and then bring all those kind of things together. It's completely fraught with danger to do that. They won't fit properly. So what you do is you join all 3 pieces together to create one long fuselage section, then add the spine to again complete that picture and then bring everything together. If you do that, the fit of this kit is really good. There's hardly any filling on this kit at all, and the only sort of major area of filling that I kind of found, and when I say major area of filling I mean small dots of putty and then a little bit of Mr. Surfacer, is along this edge here where the spine joins onto the upper fuselage. Beyond that I didn't use filler on this kit at all. So that gives you a kind of a good idea of how that assembles, and then once that's assembled, everything else kind of locks into place. The fit of the wings is really good, the fit of the tail is really good, all the internal sections fit really well. The only items that don't fit really well, and they are really poor, and I can't quite work out why, are the air brakes. The fit of the air brakes into the fuselage is terrible, really. I mean, shockingly bad. And I kind of thought, maybe I've done something wrong, maybe I've cleaned these up wrong or something, but dropping them into place, they don't fit properly at all. So consequently they're open on this, and although it's kind of not always prototypical to have them open, I thought it was better to do that than to try and bodge them into place and then fill them and then rescribe around the edges, so I've just kind of left that as it is. There are some real highlights in this kit that show what Kitthawk can do. The cockpit is astonishing, the seat is fantastic, the weapons are really brilliant. I've added the I've done this as a photo reconnaissance aircraft, so I've added the reconnaissance pod underneath here, and yeah, my friends have contacted me to make sure that I fitted this the right way round. It is glued on the right way round. Okay, so this is done as a kind of a tactical reconnaissance aircraft. I like that. I didn't really want to put weapons all over it and just bomb it up. I like these aircraft to be a bit more stripped back, so that's kind of what I've done on this. Camouflage, I've used the kit decals over the top of the camouflage. This is a Ukrainian Air Force one, and I like the way that the yellow and blue decals worked. They work beautifully as well. Over a gloss finish, I put the decals on, put them into place, a little bit of softener here and there, and they just suck straight down over the top of the surface detail. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So overall, I'm glad this thing's finished. It did take me a long time to put together. Part of that is down to the complexity of the kit. This is a lot of kit to build and paint, and there are a lot of little bits that need to be done once it's all complete. Once the camouflage is done, there are huge areas of natural metal that need to be masked off, and that took an eternity to do. But once it's complete, I think it looks really good, actually. I know there are some issues with, I mentioned this in the previous video, there are some issues with the shape of the underbelly, but with all of the weapons into place and all the pylons and everything else in place, I just can't see it, and I didn't really worry too much about it. It's not an easy kit to build. It needs care. It needs you to pay attention to the instructions and to plan ahead. There's no good ploughing straight through and hoping this thing's all going to come together. you need to understand that you are going to have to think about what you do before you put it together. But now that it is together, I really like it. I really like it. Wasn't convinced by the colours of this thing, although I've matched the colours as accurately as possible to the photographs that I had. I wasn't really convinced that I liked the camouflage colours, but now it's finished, I really like the model. I think it's great. It sits nicely, looks good, it's big, dominates the display case. So yeah, not perfect, but certainly one, if you fancy really getting your teeth into something and you like modern jets, have a crack at this. It's good, good kit. Okay, and finally, I mentioned during one of the last roundups that I had that I've been given a Revell 32nd scale Spitfire Mark 9. He says blowing the dust off this one. Well, this is it. This is the completed model. This is based on their earlier kit, and as such has had a bunch of modifications done to it to bring it up to Mark 9 specifications. Excuse me. I have to say that I wasn't really expecting a great deal from this kit when it first arrived. I liked the way it looked in the box. I liked the way that it was moulded. It looked like it was clean and tidy and kind of simple. But as I'd already built a couple of the Tamiya ones, I was thinking, well, how's it going to compare to Tamiya's kit? Well, it kind of doesn't, but it kind of does as well. If that's not a major contradiction. If you were to put this one by the side of a Tamiya kit, you will notice a massive difference in complexity, in detail. You'll notice a difference in shape as well, and you'll notice a difference in kind of overall feel between this kit and Tamiya's. However, there's a caveat to that. This thing is 30 quid, Tamiya's is 3 times that. So you are getting 3 times as much in Tamiya's kit. But that doesn't necessarily mean, if I'm not contradicting myself, that this is in some way 3 times less a kit. It isn't. It's certainly worth buying, it's certainly worth building, it goes together well, and now that it's finished, I'm actually really pleased with it. I think it looks great. I've done this one as a Norwegian aircraft, and I like the way that it looks with these stripes on the outer wings. I think they look great, and it just sits nicely. It looks really kind of cool. If I can get rid of this fly who's come in to say hello, buzz off. So yeah, it looks kind of cool. It looks, you know, good, and it's easy to build as well. There are issues with this thing. Some of the surface details are a bit heavy-handed. Some of the rivet detail around the fuselage and underneath the cockpit, I think, is a bit heavy-handed. Same with some of the rivets on the wings. However, the pleasure I had from building this certainly has made up for any of the deficiencies that I saw in it. And I would certainly build another one. There's no two ways about that. I would look forward to building another one of these. I'm actually thinking of building the earlier version, the Mark II, I think it is, just to see what that thing looks like. I did correct a few things on this, and I did change a couple of things. I added some metal seat straps inside the cockpit, and I also changed the exhausts on this for some from Pacific Coast Spitfire Mark 9 that I had going spare, as did I the wheels. The wheels in this kit aren't very good, and I thought about replacing those, so that's what I did. So this is Revell's 32nd scale Spitfire. 30 quid's worth of kit. I'm sure as well that if you shop around you'll probably be able to get it cheaper than that. And anything cheaper than 30 quid, this really is an absolute bargain. There's no two ways about that. So yeah, nice kit, and one that I can certainly recommend to anybody that fancies having a go at this. And certainly, if you wanted to build up a collection of Mark 9 Spitfires in this scale, you may well find that a Tamiya kit is a bit too much to be building, you know, multiples of those, unless you've got loads of money lying around. If you're you know, richer than a rich thing, then please, you know, go ahead. But if you wanted a simple collection of 32nd scale Spitfires, you want to be able to build them quickly and display them quickly, then this is definitely the way to go. So there we are. That's a little kind of roundup that I guess reintroduces me to you after a few months away. hopefully you'll enjoy watching this, and hopefully you'll enjoy some of the points that I've made, and agree, disagree with them, don't know. Hopefully as well it won't be another 3 months before I come up with another video. I really hope not. And so hopefully you'll be able to join me again. In the meantime, thanks very much for popping in, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Take care, bye.